Paradise is the very presence of God. It's in heaven. That's where the Old Testament saints went, on the promise of Christ's death, burial, and resurrection, and which He accomplished. So they were saved in view of what Christ would do. And now that Christ has accomplished that, where do believers go? Right into the presence of God.
Welcome back to the Straight Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Philpott, and we're glad you've joined us today. As always, I'm joined by Richard Caldwell, the pastor of Founders Baptist Church, and our special guest today is Dr. Nicolas Ellen, a senior professor at the College of Biblical Studies and also pastor at Community of Faith Bible Church. As always, please leave a comment for us in the comment section, and do us a favor and please go to the iTunes podcast section and leave us a review. Well, one question we often get, and I'm sure you pastors get with your congregants, is this intermediary place between death and Christ's return. And I'm thinking in particular about when Christ Himself dies, He rises from the dead in 3 days. Where does He go in that intermediate time period? And then also for Christians who die today and Christ is yet to return. This intermediary state, where did Christians go? Where did Christ go?
Well, on the day that He was dying, He had a thief next to Him, to whom He gave a promise. And you find that promise in Luke chapter 23, verse 43. Jesus said to him, "Truly I say to you today, you will be with me in paradise." So He says to the believing thief on the cross, "Today you'll be with me. Today you'll be with me in paradise." The debate centers on where was paradise. And so some have taught that in Old Testament times, prior to the resurrection and ascension of Christ, the abode of the dead was made up of two compartments. On one side, you had a place of darkness where unbelievers were assigned. The other place, Abraham's bosom, they would say, was paradise. And so someone who died in faith would descend into Hades, and they would, into Sheol, and they would be in this place, sort of a holding tank, I guess you could say, a spiritual holding tank. What's interesting about that is there are two other places in the New Testament where paradise is mentioned. In both cases, it's in the very presence of God in heaven. So, for example, in 2 Corinthians 12, Paul says, "I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven, whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows. And I know that this man was caught up into paradise, whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know." And he goes on. So paradise for Paul was the third heaven. Paradise was up, right, in the presence of God. In Revelation 2:7, this is the other place we find paradise in the New Testament. "He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God." So in the very presence of God in heaven. So what about those Old Testament saints? Well, I think about Enoch, who walked with God and then was not. Mm-hmm. Well, in Hebrews, in the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 5, it says, "By faith Enoch was taken up, so that he should not see death, and he was not found because God had taken him." Mm-hmm. So Enoch, in the language of Hebrews 11, he's taken up. And I think about Elijah, who is caught up in a chariot, right, into the heavens. Mm-hmm. He's caught up. And then I think about the transfiguration of Christ, where He's meeting with Moses and Elijah. He's talking to Moses and Elijah. Well, Moses died a natural death. Mm-hmm. Elijah was caught up. Mm-hmm. And so where was Elijah? In the very presence of God. Where's Moses at? In the same place where Elijah is. So I don't think you can make a case, in my view, that there was this holding tank concept. Mm. Paradise is the very presence of God. It's in heaven. That's where the Old Testament saints went, on the promise of Christ's death, burial, and resurrection, and which He accomplished. So they were saved in view of what Christ would do. And now that Christ has accomplished that, where do believers go? Right into the presence of God. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. This is the language of 2 Corinthians chapter 5. So we're in this earthly house, awaiting a day of future resurrection where we'll have a new body that matches the new us. When this body expires, we are glorified spirits in the presence of God, comfortable there, at home there. Paul says when he was caught up into the third heaven, he didn't know whether it was in the body or out of the body. So a place where we're at home, but still awaiting a future resurrection where we'll have the new body that matches the new us. So paradise was in heaven. This is where the thief on the cross went. This is where Jesus went. And this is where we go between the time of our physical death and our future resurrection.
Dr. Ellen, would you like to add?
I just think Revelation 6 talks about that, where John is sharing one of his visions, and he is seeing those who have been slain in the past, and they are in the presence of God, saying, "How long, O Lord?" So I think that's just another example of to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord.
Well, thanks again for joining us for the Straight Truth Podcast. And you can find more details about this podcast by going to our website, straighttruth.net. And there you can subscribe to any of our social media channels. But also be sure to go to iTunes and please subscribe to our podcast feed and be sure to leave us a review. Now, Straight Truth is a production of Walking in Grace Ministries. And you can find more details by going to walkingingrace.org. Thanks again.